I call to order the regular meeting of the City of Aransas Pass City Council, September 6, 2022, at 5:30 p.m. Let's all rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. And Donald, sir, can you lead us in prayer?
Father, we thank you, Lord, for your many blessings upon our lives, and we thank you, Father, that you've seen us through so many difficult situations in the past few years. We just ask, Lord, for your blessings, your guidance, your direction upon our leadership, on our council, and our families and our community, especially those that are really suffering and hurting. We just pray, Father, that you would bring comfort to those that are in grief, and pray for those that are really struggling. We pray that you'd give them strength. Bless this meeting, we ask tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, go ahead.
What?
I have to social distance. Per doctor's orders.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go to presentations and proclamations. We're going to go to recognition of the fire department employees.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and public. Wow, we got a great turnout. I appreciate it. I've got 21 public safety servants here that I'm bringing to you this evening to recognize. And I'm going to try to run through and call them up here. So when you hear your name come up, Sergeant Davila, not here. Detective Troy Poe, not available to be here. He's out of town. Andrew Ford, he's not here.
Let's be on top of it.
John Valdez is working. Mariah is working. Jerry Kamak will be working. Sherwin, they're all voluntarily asked. Some of them are also working. Justin Garcia, Don Cruz, David Harris is here. David.
Yay!
He's on a private mission, I do know that. Jason Padron, Captain Padron.
They should all stay up here, Chief.
No, Robert.
Yeah, everybody stay up.
Sit here.
You
No,
got to line
Robinson.
up for pictures.
Donnie? Torres. Caitlin Kim. Some of these guys are working nights and stuff, so they're not coming right now. But Captain Aaron Jones, who's kind of
Yes, he-
working.
Kind of working. Okay,
Jack McCarty. So let me explain the difference here, and so you understand. This was from Saturday, the 20th of August, we had that large north side fire. The fire department pushed out an all call, and we got the one volunteer that came in on his time off. These officers and these firefighters either stayed late in their shift, or they came in early and they took designated spots and responded to command. The gold framed awards that you see here are for leadership, because this fire event was successful. I'll tell you something, I didn't know what a dozer was or what a dozer's role was in a fire. I'd never heard of it. I'm not good with firefighting. That's why we got this guy. But they know how to call in the dozers. Jack knows how to run an incident command, field operations, so excellent leadership, strong leadership, stellar performance by the officers and the firefighters that came in on their time off and worked. They didn't have to, but they did. And I think it's commendable that they were able to safeguard property and lives. And thankfully, the rain came late. It didn't respond to the all-call, but
But it came.
And so while they were safeguarding the infrastructure and property, eventually the rain came in and kind of took the thunder out of the flames, so it helped out. But it took every bit of them, and I did not recognize the outside services. The fire chief's gonna do that, but there were several state resources that came from out of the area and provided services on a whim, and it worked towards our benefit. That could have been a very devastating fire. How many, give us a summary of it again, Fire Chief?
There was about 75 different pieces of, or 45 different pieces of apparatus, 75 to 100 personnel there. The state, almost every volunteer fire department, but probably the furthest that came was, well, no, for local fire departments, it's probably gonna be, what, Kingsville?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kingsville.
Yeah.
So it took every bit of those resources, that knowledge to make this a successful event. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
Then you get a group. I was so close to my dad's house.
Appreciative.
I had two people that had to evacuate.
Wait, one more.
Two papers.
That was me. Thank you.
It's awesome.
Great job.
Thank you.
Great
May
job.
or
Appreciate
may
y'all.
not have bunny ears.
Yes.
Okay, now we're gonna go to presentation and discussion on tax increment reinvestment zones and tax increment financing.
Cannot hear.
Mayor and Council, the purpose of this is to give you information about an economic development tool.
Sir, I'm sorry, I cannot hear.
Okay, I'll speak into the microphone more.
That would be,
Mayor and Council, this is for informational purposes only, for a discussion and presentation related to tax increment financing, an economic development tool that's used quite often around the United States as well as in Texas. It's simply for your information and background. It's something that could be a tool, but want to bring it to your attention for further discussion, not necessarily at this meeting, but at future meetings, just letting you know that tool is out there and will go into some depth. Mr. David Pettit, who is on the line right now, and he will be talking with you and giving a presentation on tax increment financing. David, can you hear me, David?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can hear you quite well. If you will take it from there. Go ahead, David.
Mr. Manager, Mayor, members of council, thank you so much for this opportunity. As the manager mentioned, this is just for informational purposes only. But we do specialize, my firm, in tax increment financing. So a little bit about myself, I have to use the mouse here, I guess, I have a economic development firm that specializes in public-private partnerships. My background is I have a master's in public administration. My first job was with the city of Dallas. Then I was with the city of San Antonio, but I noticed that there was a real opportunity to have a niche in crafting public-private partnerships. So with that, started a firm, and I've been doing this for about 28 years now. And we provide public-private partnerships, local government policy guidance, creative incentive financing, program management, and many other challenges that face communities like yours. So our services include public-private partnership structuring, incentive negotiation. Tonight we're talking about creating, and we also amend tax increment reinvestment zones. Chapter 380 grant, contract negotiations, city council workshops, economic impact reporting. We also get granular in the taxable value analysis, pro forma analysis. underwriting of incentive packages, and market financial feasibility and cost benefit analysis and appraisal. So a little bit about our firm. After my stint in the public sector, I think it was right around 1999, got into the private sector. And really you can't, there is not a whole lot of economic development that does not include both the public and the private. Hence the P3, public-private partnerships. And you also know that we talk about acronyms in government. And so we have to give everything in acronyms, so P3 stands for public-private partnership. So our clients, about 3/4 of our clients are cities. They range from very large to very small. By way of example, Bay City, we are now currently creating the 5th TERS, primarily for single family, for downtown, there's some mixed use development. And then we have some very well-heeled private developers that focus on single family development, retail development, industrial development. So we feel that that gives us an advantage when we're trying to look for solutions to complex problems. So that brings us to the point at hand. And I understand that y'all have 2 to 3 hours to talk about this. Is that right? Okay, I'm a jokester, sorry. And I will try to keep this brief.
At least 3, right?
I try to be brief and kind of short in my presentation. But tax increment reinvestment zones. Tax increment financing, that government term, the acronym TIF, is a tool that incentivizes economic development within a tax increment reinvestment zone that occurs. We use that term TIF and TERS interchangeably. One is a concept, one is what's actually referred to in the statute. And that statute of TERS, tax increment reinvestment zones, is governed by the tax code, Texas Tax Code Chapter 311. And as the manager said, hundreds of these TERS have been created throughout the state. So cities, alone or in partnership with other taxing jurisdictions, can use this tool to pay for improvements in a zone so it will attract new development, facilitate investment, and bring excitement and energy to a designated area. I already mentioned that it's part of Chapter 311 of the Tax Code. So the key here is incremental ad valorem taxes are utilized as a financing source. The city and those taxing entities that contribute ad valorem taxes received from, this is the key, incremental value increases on property. I have an example in a minute that'll help walk through that through the incremental value increases on property within the TERS. So those are used to pay for infrastructure, public improvements, economic development programs, and other projects benefiting the zone. This is all outlined in Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. So, first question we get, is this a new tax? It is not a new tax on development. It redirects a portion of the tax generated from new development within a TERS. So I think this is a nice graphic, but I want you to close your eyes and just kind of imagine a vacant piece of property. And essentially, if you drew a zone, a boundary around that piece of property, and the city said, okay, if there's any growth that occurs here through new development, 50% goes into the general fund and 50% goes to fund public improvements. And so that is essentially what a TERS is. So I'm closing my eyes right now, I hope you are too. Imagining a vacant, underutilized piece of property, needs infrastructure, the zone is drawn around it, and basically if development occurs, 50% of that taxes, and it's not new taxes, it's taxes they would pay anyway. 50% is redirected to the TERS fund to pay for those public improvements, and 50% goes to the general fund. So the TERS, this graphic is more academic. I think it does the same job, but I like to visualize in my own head. Okay, you have a vacant piece of property. No taxes are being generated. That's the brown piece. And then if there is growth, 50% goes into a TERS fund to pay for improvements within the zone. 50% goes to the general fund. This is fundamental to a TERS. There's two ways to generate tax increment: new construction or investment, or annual appreciation of real property. I also call this organic growth. I've had a lot of organic growth lately on my home over the past 5 years. It has grown at the homestead cap at 10% per year. So this is more applicable not on new construction, but let's say you put in a TIF in the downtown area and you have some properties and you think that those will increase in value. Maybe the appraisal district doesn't have those valued correctly, but 9 times out of 10, we're typically talking about facilitating new construction or investment. There are other times, and they're more outliers, where we talk about just putting in the TERS and not doing anything and just playing with that organic growth, that 10% growth that we have on single-family homes. I think this chart represents well the process. Development increases property values, that therefore increases or produces tax increment. It funds TERS improvements, and just like any catalytic development, that funds development, increases property values, generates tax increment, and TERS improvements. Now the key here is if there's no development, there's no increase in property values, and then there's no increment. So you'll hear me say, and a lot of people make fun of me for saying this, but if you have a fallow piece of land or a vacant piece of land and you're doing 50%, I always like to say 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Now that's assuming that the development wouldn't move forward without some sort of TERS district to help pay for the infrastructure. But I do like that saying. I like a lot that 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And I'm still envisioning that vacant piece of land, and we're trying to encourage some wonderful, high-quality development. So, question, why create a TERS? You have private development activity expected to occur within a designated area. Benefits an area large rather than being project specific. So we have found that TIFs typically need to be of a certain size. You wouldn't want to create a TERS around one building. We do have certain cities, like the city of Fort Worth, Dallas, San Antonio, where they're up in, they have 20, 30 TIFs. But typically you want to have a TIF that's kind of larger area that has larger infrastructure needs, because you're going to need all of that increment to help pay for those improvements if the project is worthy of public participation. So it also provides a funding source without impacting the current amount of general funds revenues for each taxing jurisdiction. So once again, we're talking about incremental. So if there's no development, there's no revenue. Okay, so we're not going into your existing budget and saying, hey, we need you to pay for $5 million worth of roads, water, sewer, infrastructure. It's only with that incremental. So we're not touching the general fund. And if you negotiate correctly, I'm going to say correctly, prudently, you would have some money coming to the general fund and then money going into the TERS fund. And then after those public improvements, all that money flows into the general fund. You have the ability to leverage revenues from taxable property within the TERS to generate a larger income. So once again, we're talking about these typically work on larger scale projects. We are working on downtown projects that might be 20 blocks. Those are kind of like the minimum. You know, I cut my teeth on large downtown projects like downtown Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, but have done projects for cities the size of Salina. Bay City is another one that has a downtown TIF. And so the range in size, but they typically have to be on the larger size in order to make sense. What a TIF does, it attracts potential developers and investment into an area that may not otherwise occur. Burdens to put in roads, water, sewer infrastructure to go vertical with development can sometimes be extremely daunting, particularly for a developer, because banks typically don't want to lend money on, you know, speculative development. So you're having to put in essentially equity or a 50-50 loan in order to put in infrastructure. So the TERS is a way to show the developers, the investment community, that hey, the community is behind this development, and if they perform, we're willing to help offset some of that infrastructure cost. And it also demonstrates the commitment to creating a sense of place and identity. And another thing I didn't put on here is also increases the quality of the development. I can't emphasize that enough. Increase the quality of the development. And also bring the development to the market quicker than it would if we did not have TIF in place. So Chapter 311 outlines the the various procedures for creating and amending a TERS. There's two main documents. There's a creation ordinance and a TERS project and financing plan ordinance. The creation ordinance establishes 5 key elements. One is the boundary. So once again, I'm envisioning that vacant piece of land, we draw a boundary around it, and somebody says, okay, I want to build 100 homes here. Okay, and then there's a term. Typically those terms can be 15, 20, 25. I've seen them go all the way out to 45 years. The city participation, the example I've shown before, or showed before with the graphic, 50%. So we as the city are saying, okay, if you produce new value, we're willing to put 50% into our general fund, and then 50% going to the TERS fund to help pay for those public improvements. And then you have a preliminary project and financing plan, and really that's the roadmap for how the money's going to be spent. So upon the TERS creation, final project and financing plan is approved by the TERS board and then the city council by separate ordinance. So those are the 2 primary ordinances to create a TERS. So common questions, somebody asked me how many TIFs I've created, and it's several hundred, and these are some of the most common questions, but I think we answered this earlier. No, a TERS is not a new tax. Essentially what you're doing is you're redirecting taxes off a new development to pay for infrastructure in that zone, in that TERS. So they're existing taxes, it's just on incremental growth, and that is going into a TIF fund to pay for approved improvements. Which taxing jurisdictions can participate in a TERS? We did this a lot. Any taxing unit that collects ad valorem taxes from property in the TERS may participate in a TERS project, but only a city or county per statute can initiate a TERS project and create a TERS. And the governing body of the city or county that creates the TERS is responsible for the TIF project, including administration. That's basically having a TIF fund, and as you get dollars from the development, under the example of the 50-50 split, 50% from this TERS goes into the general fund and 50% goes into the TIF fund, which is part of the creation ordinance. Many people ask how many board members are required for a TIF. That could be anywhere between 5 members, minimum of 5, and not exceed 15. Who appoints the board members? The city is typically the ones that initiate. There haven't been a whole lot of counties. initiated TIFs because they've been incorporated areas that have done these. And so the city appoints all of the board of directors, the board members, and each participating, and I want to emphasize the term participating taxing jurisdiction, it's one board appointment. But once again, only if they participate. Back prior to 2005, when we created TIFs, and you can tell I've been around for a while, we had to put a representative on the TIF board from the school district, from the Port Authority, from the community college district, even if they did not have money going into the TERS. And sometimes that complicated the process, and the legislature acknowledged that and changed it. So basically, if this city money goes in, the city controls it. And I'd also like to say that we typically recommend that the city council is the board, because typically how these work is the TERS board makes recommendations, and then it goes to the city council for approval. But it's all kind of written out in the project financing plan. So a lot of times we have found when we have, you can just think of your P&Z board, your planning and zoning, they might have an idea of what's appropriate zoning, but the ultimate, the decider, the ultimate decision is being made by council. So we do that so that the ultimate decision is made by council, because you're going to be the ones, and so it alleviates some of the administrative. But there's benefits to and pros and cons to it. This is not in any book. This is just my observations of how public-private partnerships are used. One is for infrastructure improvements, and that's use of economic development tools like a TERS in conjunction with planning to foster development and redevelopment, typically focusing on infrastructure needs. How often do we see a developer comes into a community and says, yeah, this is great, but will you let me do a municipal utility district, because I can't afford to put in all this stuff. And there's a tug of war that goes in between the city and sometimes these special utility districts. And so infrastructure needs, particularly on larger tracts, are needed. And so we see these public-private partnerships focusing on those public agreements. Business creation retention, we're working on a project in El Paso right now that they have a prospect that would like to have in PERS, and that is helping with their relocation and sometimes also with the retention of the targeted business. And so we put that in place, and we look at a 25, 30-year period, and there's that revenue stream that comes in from their new development. And then the third one is gap financing, and that's the use of economic development tools to facilitate a fair rate of return for private investment that otherwise would not occur. This typically occurs, you can kind of imagine a downtown, and let's say that you have an old historic building and it needs to be restored, but I don't have any public infrastructure that I can pay for through the TERS. Gap financing, and we have the ability to do grants, makes sense in order to get that project moving and for it to be a productive asset. And so gap financing is one of, it's the main focus that we focus on is on infrastructure improvements, and I would say that's 80 to 90% of what we do when we create TERS is focus on infrastructure, but it can be used for these other two purposes as well. So the TERS expenditures and agreements tend to fall in two categories, and I'll be brief on these. Items described as project cost under the TIF statute, so basically does it meet the criteria under project cost? And then in 2005, activities consistent with authority granted by the TIF statute to use program 380, that's local government code 380 authority. They gave us a lot of flexibility, and I'll explain that here in just a minute. Typical traditional public infrastructure, 90% of what we do is the cost of public works and public infrastructure. So you're talking roads, water, sewer, drainage, anything that you would think that would be in the public right of way, that's eligible public infrastructure. And so, just that's straight down the fairway, eligible for reimbursement from PERS or funding from PERS. For the example of the project, I had a project in downtown Fort Worth, which was in PERS. Prior to adding the Program 380 grants, we did not have a way to pay for the building because there was no public infrastructure. It had its roads, it had its water, it had its sewer. It just happened to be an old building. And the only way we could work that around was we leased the facade, which meant the Chapter 311 public infrastructure for 10 years. So the city leased the facade, and we gave them $100,000 per year for 10 years, equaling $1 million to make that project work. Under this, I could have just given them a grant afforded under Chapter 311 and afforded by Chapter Program 380. And you really have to meet the test. Will it promote state and local economic development, stimulate business and commercial activity in the municipality? I would have much rather had that than go through and try to appraise what's the value of this facade of the building. It was historic, but and how long, and this gives a way of moving a project like that forward. Like I said, 90% of what we do is on the infrastructure, but we do have this creative caveat that allows us to do grants. Now, I will say that the TIF statute only allows city dollars to be used for making grants and loans, and that is consistent with the local government code 380. And so if you were successful in getting another taxing jurisdiction, you could use their money for making loans and grants. It has to be just the city money that's going into TERS. So the process, a TERS is created through the creation ordinance. A TERS plan is approved. A development agreement is approved by the board and the council and the city council. I call it the Texas two-step. You got to go to the TIF board, and you got to go to the city council with the developer. Project costs are incurred, so the developer puts in the infrastructure. The project is completed, so you can put in roads, water, sewer, and sometimes not have any vertical development. But if you do have that vertical development, you have that tax increment generated. So it's performance-based. So all the risk is with the developer. But if there is that tax generated, and under the example of the 50/50, that money goes into the TIF fund, and the developer is reimbursed over time for their investment. So with that, I'm happy to answer. This is a very high level, but this is a tool that I see a lot of communities using, particularly for projects that, whether it be a downtown redevelopment or be projects that have heavy public infrastructure. And once again, we are talking about incremental. So I want you to envision that, I'm closing my eyes, envisioning that vacant piece of land, and you're just drawing a boundary around it. And you say, okay, if there is increment from that, if there is new development, the taxes that come off of that, we agree to split 50/50. 50 goes into the general fund, 50% goes into the TERS fund. TERS fund is to pay for those improvements. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
It's the only one I've got. I know I've heard you say you've done this in Dallas and these larger metropolises. How about in a city the size of less than 10,000 people?
Happening more and more common. I can get you a list. I'll get it to Gary. The Texas Comptroller has a list of every county and every TERS in all 254 counties. And you're seeing cities the size. I grew up in Argyle, Texas, which had 1,300 people, and it has a TIF now. Now it's grown significantly since then. You know, Salina, Texas was very small when it started out, but it's grown significantly. Bay City, around 15,000. Victoria, just put in a TERS, and they're downtown. So there are a lot of cities. And there's a threshold within Chapter 311. So cities that are less than 100,000 people, you can put up to 50% of your taxable value into a TERS. If you're a city over 100,000, you can put up to 25%. And I also do want to make mention of a policy outcome of this, is anything that the city puts into a TERS is protected under SB 2, 3.5%. So when you're doing your truth in taxation, you take the total taxable value, less new construction, less what's in a TIF, to do your truth in taxation with that 3.5% growth in value cities. So a lot of cities are utilizing this mechanism in order to protect, if you will, that 3.5% growth term. I will tell you, there's a couple of cities I work with that have gone into 100% for 12,000 acres because they're worried about their 3.5% growth, hitting their 3.5%.
Any other questions? If not, David, thank you very much. This is for presentation and discussion only. David, been very helpful and appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Mayor
you.
and council, I hope you all
Good
have
information.
the rest of your meeting and a wonderful evening.
Now we're gonna go to board and commission appointments, which is to the Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District Boards.
Yes. There are 3 terms that are expiring on the Crime Control and Prevention District Board. Those terms are for Karen Mayer, David Petrositis, and David Harris, and they've all indicated their interest in being reappointed.
Well, I make a motion to reappoint directors to the Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District for 2-year terms to September 1st, 2024. For the directors for Karen Mayer, David Petrositis, and David Harris.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna go to the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District.
And on the MDD Board, terms are expiring for Terry Stansberry, Donald Votes, Elizabeth Doris, and Renee Thacker, and they're all seeking reappointment.
Well, I make a motion to reappoint Terry Stansberry, Donald Voles, Elizabeth Doris, and Renee Thacker to the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District for 2-year terms to September 1st, 2024.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna go to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I believe the next board is the Building Board of Standards and Appeals.
Yep.
And on this board, terms are expiring for Michael Moore and Myron Schroeder and Dan Moore. Mr. Michael Moore and Myron Schrader are both seeking reappointment. Mr. Dan Moore is not seeking reappointment. There is a board application from Elizabeth Doris for consideration to this board.
I make a motion to reappoint Michael Moore and Myron Schrader and to appoint Elizabeth Doris for the Building Board of Standards and Appeals for a 2-year term to September 2024.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain because of Michael Moore, but I do approve of Elizabeth Doris.
Okay, we're gonna go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments.
The next board on here is the Planning and Zoning Commission. And on this board, terms are expiring for Richard Kubik, Juanice Butler, and Liz Doris, and all are seeking reappointment.
Okay, I'll make a motion to reappoint Richard Kubik, Juanice Butler, and Elizabeth Doris for the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 3-year term to September 2025.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna go to the consent
Okay, we've
agenda.
got, Mayor, we've got one more board, and that's the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And on this board, terms are expiring for Michael Moore and Richard Kubik, and both have expressed an interest in being reappointed.
I make a motion to reappoint Michael Moore and Richard Kubik for the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a 2-year term to September 2024.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay, now we're gonna go to the consent agenda. All of the following items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by city council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of this item unless a council member so requests. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 18th, regular
I'm sorry,
meeting.
excuse me, Mayor, I don't understand what you just said. Could you repeat yourself?
We're gonna go to the consent agenda. All of the following items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of this item unless a council member so requests. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
But only you all decided that.
Correct.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 18th, 2022 regular meeting, July 28th, 2022 workshop meeting, August 1st, 2022 regular meeting, and August 22nd, 2022 workshop meeting as printed.
August 15th
August 15th, I'm sorry.
and the 22nd. There's
15th and August 22nd
workshop.
workshop meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're gonna open public hearing on Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District Budget. In the public hearing on the Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District Budget for the fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Good evening, Council. Before you, you have the crime control. Is that what we're doing, right? The crime control? The crime control budget that they've already approved. It's for you to review. Do you have any questions?
Why do you think their sales tax is going to go down by $1,000 in 2023?
That's what they've budgeted. That's what Mr. Stansbury and the board agreed to budget for the year. They're very conservative in their estimates.
Okay. Everything else looked good to me. Mayor.
Did you open the public hearing? Okay.
Yeah, we're on the public hearing right now.
Okay.
May I speak now? I've been visiting with Hector Rios, 1044 South Commercial. I have been going to the past couple of crime prevention board meetings. I've been one of the very few people that do go. If you do notice on the very last item, I think there is wanting to budget out $100,000 plus to build a brand new dock. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe that we already have boat slips here that are accessible to the city from the big grant, the boat infrastructure grant. If I'm not mistaken, we do have boat slips out there. Why are we wanting to spend $150,000 on building new boat slips if we already have access to and already own one?
I second that.
I don't see the boat slips. I don't see the boat slips. I see the building.
The very bottom?
Yeah, it's the building.
I don't see that
Yes.
on here.
Yeah.
So this past fiscal year, the city reassigned the harbor safety and enforcement under public safety in the police department. So that building is part of public safety at this point in the police department. We manage it. We have a full-time employee there. And we do have 2 public safety boats that we use regularly. We need to have them accessible and in the water right there. So we're looking at having a boat dock added right there at that facility so that they can load up essential or required equipment. We can have it directly connected to the public safety network and everything that comes in with that building. So that's why we were looking at having those boat slips installed there, and the crime board has agreed under this funding to fund it up to $100,000 for public safety vessels. We've had to work quite a bit on that because we've had a few bids, and the bids have been very outlandish. We had a company, Jack's not here right now, but we did have a company that reached out to us and can do it for a lot more cost effective than what the prior bids have come in at.
Will those be accessible for Texas Parks and Wildlife and Coast Guard if needed?
Absolutely. So part of the cooperation is we've already have an interlocal agreements with Coast Guard, Parks and Wildlife. We work very closely with them. We also share the area maritime, I can never say it right, the Area Maritime Security Board that the port runs. We have two basically major channels, 40 square miles of water within our jurisdiction, and until recently we've never had a way to respond on the water to public safety emergencies or implications.
And
Thank you.
60% of the city limits of Aransas is in the water.
12 square miles on land, 40 square miles of water, and we are capturing that data. In fact, Captain Jones is in charge of oversight, and our employee stays very busy with water-related activities at times, especially during those peak times when recreation is huge in our coastal waters here.
And these funds are coming from the sales tax, not from taxes, but sales tax.
Crime Control and Prevention District, and it's covered under that whole umbrella.
The sales tax.
Correct.
Well, at this time, I do feel like spending a lot of time on the water with the crime rate that we do have here on land, where half the citizens, we might have had, what'd you say, 70% of our, might be water?
It's 60-40.
60-40. So we got 40% where 100% of the citizens of Aransas Pass live, and we have such a high crime rate. I just find it hard to spend that kind of money on building a new slip when we already have one. If we can absolutely work out with the Coast Guard and borrow it and work together, that's what we're supposed to do. But first, to go off and spend $150,000 when there's so many other things that we can spend crime prevention money on to solely spend it on a dock, I just don't think that's a reasonable cost on the taxpayers of Aransas Pass. And we do have Coast Guard, Texas Parks and Wildlife. We have several other entities out there patrolling and taking care of the coast. And I do understand that we did have a tragic accident where a young lady fell over. They actually made a law about it. I believe it's called Kaylee's Law, where she was killed in an accident. But even in a perfect society, if there was no crime, people are going to still slip on banana peels. People are going to still fall off boats. We're still going to have a lot of problems out there that's not going to be necessarily having to do anything with crime prevention. So I just feel that maybe if we would just kind of reconsider, maybe just putting it off for a little bit and consider what else that we could do with that $150,000 and use our own docks that we already presently own. And yes, there you go, and that are paid for. And I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you for your service. God bless you and love you all.
Kathleen Holland, 1717 South Avenue A. I seconded all of his motions. Is this the only time I can get up here? Or just this subject and I can come up on another subject?
Mm-hmm.
Another subject? Thank you. What he said is 100% true. It was nodded and commented back here along. I don't know if you don't hear because whatever. You just need to think about this and stop. It's what the U.S. Coast Guard is for. How many bases of Coast Guards do we have in this vicinity? Chief, how many? You don't even know right offhand, do you? There is two.
I speak at the pleasure of the mayor. He runs the meeting, so if he allows me to speak, I will comment.
Well, if you post the rules of the road here, I'd be happy to follow them. But it seems to be made up as you go along. And I need to speak to you immediately. That's all.
Well, I personally think that it's a good idea to have those docks readily accessible whenever the emergency people need it, and have a place to dock and all that stuff, versus having to go across the harbor and go all the way down the road to be able to accomplish that. Time is of the essence when you have an emergency.
May I?
Ma'am, if you...
Do you want to come up and speak?
We have helicopters, police helicopters. Coast Guard helicopters that can get there much more quicker than y'all.
It's a matter of perception.
Excuse me?
I said it's a matter of perception.
You need
how
to
look
speak
at
up because your voice is not going into the microphone, sir. I can hardly hear you sitting here.
it. I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Could you correct that?
Correct what?
You speaking into the microphone.
Melinda.
Yes, right at the very top of the meeting. I don't need nobody disrupting the meeting.
Melinda, well, the mayor just re-clarified. So ma'am, are you finished speaking?
For this subject, yes.
Okay, please have a seat. Thank you. Mayor, may I? So we had explored trying to work with Coast Guard, even Port Aransas, for example. Port Aransas has far more water in their jurisdiction. And unfortunately, we've had to assist over there when it comes to the Coast Guard and others. I will say that when you call for an emergency in, we've had experiences to where it can take quite an exorbitant amount of time to get the Coast Guard. In fact, on occasion, if I'm not mistaken, we've been referred to contact the port for an immediate response. We now have a response for the people that come to our community, recreate, our residents, and stuff like that. And when you speak to percentage or money, we have one position assigned to the waters to provide safety. It's not a 24/7 service. We have a 24/7 service with quite a bit more employees focused on public safety. And just as I have done with Mr. Rios on several occasions, I've invited Mr. Rios to come in and to, get the word from the cow's mouth, basically, see the facts and see what we're dealing with. I'm happy to open my door, my books up to you, speak from an informed position, but looking from the outside in and basing decisions based off of statistical numbers, which we provide to the FBI and NIBRS, is not the way that you gauge crime and personal safety and security in a community. There's a lot more that goes into that, and I open that door to anybody that would like to come in and uncover whatever information they may be seeking. Thank you, Mayor.
I kind of agree with him on the dock situation, because I've thought of this, and that's a lot of money that could go towards patrol cars or some other equipment y'all guys could use whenever. I know we got the Harbor Master building, but those docks, those grants paid for, how many, probably not even 1,000 yards away from the building. So, me personally, it'd be something I'd like to look into.
See if I can.
Any more comments? Okay, then I declare this public hearing closed, and now we go to consider an act on the Aransas Pass. No. The public hearing is closed. Now we consider an act on resolution adopting the Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution for the Aransas Pass Crime Control and Prevention District budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Now we're going to go to the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District budget, which is public hearing on the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Once again, Mayor and Council, you have the MDD budget. They've already met and approved the budget for their upcoming fiscal year. It is there for your review if you have any questions. Once again, their money is generated from sales tax, 0.5 cent of sales tax revenues.
Any
Question.
comments from the public?
Have we, excuse me, Mayor, have we seen a drop in our sales tax that, or is this just what
No.
they're being conservative
Yeah,
about
Mr.
it?
Stansbury is a very conservative gentleman when it comes to budgeting. That he's just being very uberly conservative, I think, in his numbers. He prefers to have over than under
Okay.
budget. That's the reason why you see the difference.
Okay.
But you do see that they do have a very good fund balance.
Yes.
At the end of the year anyway.
comments? But I declare this public hearing closed, and now we go to consider an act on the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
I make a motion that we approve that we adopt the Aransas Pass Municipal Development District budget for the year 2022 and 2023.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're gonna go to the 2022 property tax rate, and I'm gonna open up public hearing on tax year 2022 property tax rate of 0.774362.
Let me go ahead and kick this off, Mayor and Council, if I may. You'll notice that this is a public hearing only, and no action is requested at this meeting. The action is being requested for the meeting on the 12th, for your information. The tax rate has been reduced for the past couple of years approximately. And that's what's being proposed for this budget also. What was submitted to you a few meetings ago was a tax rate of 77, down to 77. The suggestion was made for 76. And I'd like to talk about that for a second. Why staff is suggesting that we stay with 77, which is a reduction from the previous year, actually the current year. The expenditures that we are encountering out there with the increase in cost are huge, but it's something that we have to live with as far as expenditures go. We've lived for many years with a very small fund balance. S&P, our rating agency, saw what our fund balance was back in 2017, and you've heard me say many times there was a visible gasp around the table. We were in the single digits. A city has to have at least 25%. And so they said, we will not reduce you if you bring your fund balance up. So for the past several years, thanks to the finance department, thanks to the city council, that rate has been going up. And they indicated to us, no, they mandated us to have a 40%, which is huge compared to other cities. But they said, you have been so bad in the past several years, decades, that you've got to increase that fund balance. And we have increased it in the past 2 years to 40, right at 40%. What this budget is proposing with that tax rate is a 40%, just slightly over 40% as far as the fund balance. A fund balance, for those who don't know, is a gauge of what's happening with the general fund. It's an indication of how strong your budget is. A weak fund balance, a weak budget. And that fund balance has been increasing over the years, over the past 3 to 4 years, thanks to you and thanks to the finance department, to the point where we are where we should be. That 77 cents allows us to be there. That's one issue. Another issue is, as I indicated, the expenditures that we have. And those expenditures are significant considering the environment right now. There's another issue. We lose people. They go to other cities for better pay. And it's something that we're wrestling with on a regular basis. That's the modern way challenge that we have these days, and that is the pay issue. And in the case of supervisors or officials, pay is important, but it's significantly important to the man on the street, our regular employees, in order to keep them. Right now, we're spending thousands of dollars as far as training goes, and then we lose them to other cities. So what's happening right now in this budget year with the other cities around us? we're recommending, or Rockport is recommending, a 5% increase. We're not there. We're below that. Well, our recommendation is going to be below that, although we have a pay survey being done that may indicate that it should be higher. In the case of Port Aransas, you may want to brace for this one. 9% for police officers, 15% for other employees. They did that last year too, is my understanding, or something very close to that. We can't compare. We're nowhere near that. We will never be anywhere time soon anywhere near that. In the case of San Pat, right, Mr. Mayor, I can't talk with people out in the audience. San Pat, right now, they are 6% to 6.5%. We are below, we're going to recommend below that Rockport 5%. That's the best we can do until we find out what the pay survey is. And then in this budget, we have set aside funds to allow incrementally for any increase that we may be able to get. I'm talking about all employees. So that's something that is a big factor as far as the rate goes. We're trying to become more competitive. We are not. We're low on the totem pole, and we're not going to meet these other rates that other cities have. We probably never will, but we can be more competitive. And with the study that's coming out, hopefully even more competitive. But we're still not going to meet what is out there right now as far as the competition goes. And to a certain extent, we'll continue to lose. But we're going to do all we can to keep the people. That retention issue is a big issue for us. Excuse me. So those are some of the issues that we've been wrestling with in the budget. The 76 cents that was raised, excellent point, can't argue with it. But to meet the increased cost of expenditures, to meet the issue of competitiveness, to meet the issue of fund balance that's not an embarrassment anymore to S&P and the people who control our rating service, that 77 is going to be necessary. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Sandra, or any of you, but want to point out why staff suggests, it's up to you and what we do, but staff suggestion of 77 is still a reduction from the current year and the previous year.
I have a question. Why is it important at what the city is rated from the S&P? What importance is that to the city?
It's critically, if you have a low rating, and when they saw our fund balance, we were close to that. That means when you have to have, when you have to borrow money for a major project, it's going to cost a lot more if they're going to give you the funding in the first place. But when the lower the rating, the higher the cost of issuances.
It's our credit score, pretty much. That's what it amounts to. And it's like Mr. Edwards said, the better the rating, the better we're going to get financing people that are going to want to bid on us, bid on our bonds, give us a better interest rate. The lower the score, the less people interested in buying our bonds, and the higher the interest rate we're going to have to pay.
Just like on the banking side, if
That's
you're
right.
borrowing and your credit score is not high, you end up paying
More. And you know
a
that.
higher interest rate.
Yes, ma'am.
Because of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hector Rios, 244 South Commercial. If I'm not mistaken, didn't we just give $2 an hour, like a little bit less than a year ago, to the officers, which would have been more than 5%, correct?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, to be honest with you.
But they did have an increase of $2. Do y'all remember, guys?
Last
Anybody remember
year-
getting a $2 raise per hour?
If I may, I'm sorry.
That was last budget
Every
cycle, I
last
believe.
year, we did get a COLA. How much that was, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can tell you what it was. It was between 2 and 3%. Is what it was. Maybe 3%, but it could have been 2%.
But you're not for sure?
It was
You
one of
don't
those
know
two,
beyond
2 or
a shadow of a
3%.
doubt?
Well, I don't have the budget in front of me.
Okay.
But it's either 2% or 3%.
Go
It's
ahead,
never
Eric.
been about 3%.
Yes, Mayor's asking. Yes, it was a substantial increase for officers, and during, I think you were about right, maybe 2 to 250 for the officers, and we are still amongst the lowest paid. They're trying to equilibrate the pay amongst the agencies around us, and that's why we decided this year to do the pay study, and the police department decided to go ahead and fund that pay study as well for the whole city, so that we can kind of get apples to apples comparatives and get to where we need to be. But again, that said, during the budget presentations, I thought that was a public meeting as well. But during those presentations, we did share an illustration that showed how we rate and compare. So you are correct, though, yes.
You know, I absolutely agree. I do want to have the highest paid officers in the entire state, as far as I'm concerned. I'd love to have them.
We've been so far behind on pay rate on employees, police department, fire department, that we can't keep staff because they get trained and they end up going working somewhere else, because we're just not competitive with them. And that's the reason why we came up with the pay rate study, so we know exactly where we stand with cities that are the same population as all the other ones, not try to compare with cities that are way larger than us.
Sure. You know, and I'm totally, like I said, I'm totally agree with that. You know, I want to have the highest paid officers in the state, but then on the other hand, I want to have one of the lowest crime rates in the entire country instead of one of the highest. Right. That's you know, and I'm hoping that this survey is also going to be a little bit of an accountability survey and make sure everybody's doing exactly what they should be doing. I greatly appreciate your time.
Just out of curiosity, Mayor, if y'all are wanting better paid police staff and everything, why are we not? I can speak with anonymity. It's my right. Okay. Why are we not using that budget of the $150,000 for a pier or boat launch to go towards our officers? It's still crime prevention.
The money that comes from the crime control, I'm sorry, the money that comes from the crime control is based on sales tax money. It is not a guaranteed. It should not be used to subsidize, should not be used to pay for salaries that we are not going to be able to sustain and maintain in years to come. Because the last thing you want to do is give the officer that money and next year not have the funding at the crime control and have to take the money away, because we don't have the money to give them. That's why we wouldn't be able to use it for that purpose.
But next year you're willing to not have the money.
If it is an unknown, if the money will or will not be able to.
Willing to have a pier versus having.
A pier is a one-time expense.
Any other comments come up to the pulpit? Okay.
Would you like to comment?
Any other comments from the public?
So you guys want a pier, okay? Which makes no sense. We have the Coast Guard. So we're double dipping or double jeopardy our taxes, basically. I mean, we don't need a boat. We don't need a pier. That's what the Coast Guard is for. We don't need a helicopter. We don't need a boat. Once you guys go so far outside of in the water anyways, you're out of jurisdiction. You got to take that into effect too. I mean, once you go, 5 miles, 10 miles, you're out of jurisdiction. So you have no authority out there. The Coast Guard has that. So spending $150,000 on something that's going to need maintenance, it's going to need all these other things, you're wasting taxpayers' money. Why don't you use it to fix the roads?
We can't use that money for the fix the roads, that's for sure. We need to distinguish the difference of where we use that money at and where not. Where you can't use it and where you can. There's a difference on that.
Yes. Somebody behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it is crime prevention money, which means it can be used on police payment.
Yes.
Their salaries, increasing their salaries, making these guys want to stay here.
You didn't just hear what she said.
I heard what she said, and it's just talk around. That's all it is. That's all any of these city council meetings are talk around. Because no matter what the citizens bring up as their point of view and their thought process, like we had numerous citizens speak against this pier, There was only one no out of the whole council saying, no, we're not going to build it. Because y'all have already made up your minds. You don't listen to your constituents. That's the problem here. You don't listen to the people. You do whatever y'all want. In fact, y'all also seem to believe that y'all can dictate the rules of government and everything. It states that we can speak freely at these meetings. Yet, at the top of your notice, it says that we can't. You're taking away our First Amendment rights.
We're on a.
I'm on the subject of the item. The item is that the council does not listen to the citizens here.
Okay,
That is the subject.
We're gonna go back to where we're at. Any other comments?
Mayor, just to clarify. The crime board does, and I think Sandra can support this, the crime board did create a retention stipend, I believe 2 years ago.
Yes.
Because the burden on the city and the general fund was so great. So that the crime board recognized the need to try to help retain good officers. Our cost to the city is right around $17,000 to get an officer onboarded and going within the department. I brought that statistic to you last year, I believe. So we do try to leverage the crime board as best we can. Those funds, like you said, can't be used on the street, they're restricted. But they are doing it in a sustainable fashion so that in the event a situation does arise, the tax drops, or some unforeseen circumstance to where the board needs to withdraw that stipend, staff know, you can ask the officers, I preface it every year on that retention stipend that we're blessed to have that this year, but it could always vanish at any time. They need to understand that. And that's also not broken out hourly because there's a burden that comes with overtime, the loaded rate, stuff like that. This is a lot of the internal workings that we have to really granularly look at when it comes to managing government and being fiscally responsible with those funds. But what I'm saying is, at any time that stipend can go away. That is not a guarantee, but it is an offset, and it is something that the crime board recognized that the burden on the city is great, and we need to do our part that is sustainable to try to give back and keep good officers and cut down on that $17,000 upfront onboarding expense of getting a cop just to lose them.
This year alone in their budget, they're budgeted $300,000 for just what Chief Blanchard stated. So the crime control is putting money to retain the staff here.
How much will we have to cut to knock it down to 76? Probably roughly around 80,000?
Around that neighborhood, yes. Right now, the budget, if I may preface what Mr. Edwards said, we've already asked staff to cut. We've already asked them. They're at the bare minimum. They're not, we haven't added anything new to the budget. This is the cost of inflation, the rise of everything that's costing right now. Everything's going up. If we were to go down to the 76 cents, we would be providing less services. That's what it amounts to be honest with you. Because we would not be able to afford at the level that we're at right now to continue to provide those services without something giving out.
How much have we gained from this budget cycle from the last, on as far as property values?
Oh, I don't have that information right in front of me. I can go ahead and have that emailed to you by tomorrow.
Because I guarantee everybody in this room, if not most of them, what's a show of hands on whose property values went up in the past year?
But you have to understand that we don't control setting of the property values.
That's not city control.
That's not our control. That's a separate entity set up by the state for that purpose alone.
That's right.
What the CAT does, and their issue is with the CAT, not with the city.
You're correct.
And
but,
we don't get all that money, Jason.
But if your valuation goes up, that means you got another 79, you got another $100 that 79 cents is gonna come out of. So automatically, your city tax bill will go up as well.
I know that. How much are you putting, is it costing you more money to put gas in your car today than it was a year ago?
Sure.
I mean, everything is going up.
Sure.
And we've got to cover that in our budget to make sure that we're not going in the wrong direction.
But we're still
Yeah,
reducing.
we're trying to move the
and we're
city
still
forward,
reducing.
not take it back. We're trying to move it forward, and it takes money to be able to repair the streets that we're talking about, to create new infrastructure and stuff like that.
Right.
Can't just be saying no to everything just for the smell of it.
Yep.
No, but I think we have an obligation as soon as we become elected officials. One of them is to make sure operations of the city run smoothly without interruption.
Right.
And
That's
the big
correct.
one is to ease the burden on the taxpayer any way possible.
And that's why we've lowered the rate again this year.
And
Third year in a
We're
row,
on the way
we've
down, on
lowered
the way
the
up.
rate.
Yep.
and it, my opinion, needs to go lower.
Takes
But
money
we
to move the
lowered
city
it.
forward.
You recognize it is lowered, right?
It's lowered.
Okay,
needs to go
so it is
lower.
lowered. Okay, thank you. As long as you recognize it is lowered. 3
We're
years in
going
a
in the right
row.
direction.
I'm still stuck on 76 cents. I was stuck on a lot lower than that, but I'm stuck with that, and I'm not budging off of it.
Any other comments? I declare the public hearing closed. Now we're gonna go to operating budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. I'm gonna open up public hearing on the operating budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Pretty much everything we
Things-
said in the tax rate is relevant to this.
Yes.
It's a repeat.
Yes, pretty much, like Mr. Edwards said, that we've budgeted the bare essentials. We're budgeting anticipated revenues in the amount overall with between all the funds that we have, about $25 million. With anticipated expenditures of about $24 million. In the general fund alone, we're budgeting revenues of $11.6 million with anticipated expenditures of $12.2 million. So the expenditures exceed the revenues at this point. Going any further, you would be bringing the fund balance even further. Do you have any questions?
No. We thank you for all the hours and hours and hours that you put in with each of the department heads and all the department heads that have to keep cutting their budgets to make this work.
Thank you.
People don't realize what's involved in
Thank
this.
you, David, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
It's an,
I mean,
it's an astronomical feat to get our fund balance to where it is today,
If I
from
may,
where
if I
it
may
was.
just talk to Mr. Councilman Knight, I just did a quick math on a $225,000 valuation home. Going down 1 penny is only going to be $22 savings
Yeah.
on the taxpayer. That's what you're looking at, the difference.
Any other comments? Okay, I declare this public hearing closed. We're gonna go to
Hold
consider
on.
and act.
We need to table the
Yes.
approval of the budget for
Yeah,
next.
even though there is action posted on the agenda, staff is asking that council postpone the final vote on the budget to September 12, 2022. So we would need a motion to postpone the final vote, and then I would do a roll call vote.
I make a motion to postpone the final vote on the fiscal budget till September 12th.
Second?
All in favor?
Okay, and then I'll do a roll
Aye.
call vote. Mayor Gomez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Scruggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Abrego,
Yes.
Councilmember Knight,
Yes.
and Councilmember Moore.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna, go to case number PZ 2208-15. We're gonna open a public hearing on renewal of a conditional use permit request by Stephen Martin for the temporary placement and operation of a mobile food establishment in front of 327 South Commercial Street, Rialto Theater, while waiting to purchase an installation of a commercial kitchen at the Rialto Theater.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is a conditional use permit renewal application. Last week, the P&Z reviewed this application, and it has come before you previously for approving the conditional use permit. The time is now due for a renewal. The P&Z reviewed the application and the conditions set. The applicant has followed all the regulations, and they did not find any adverse effect on the use of the location, which was in contention. The State Department, which is the TxDOT, does not have issues currently, and they recommend that it should be extended. And so they are before you here for an extension for 6 months, as is stated in the ordinance. And the applicant is here to answer any questions that you may have on this request for renewal. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, have you started the renovation of your kitchen yet?
No, ma'am. We had the roof. Billy, you want to come up here?
Yes, we've had the roof recovered, but we are still having leaks in that area, and we're having that company come back out to see what they can do to keep that particular part of the building from flooding. There's actually a good 3 inches of water in there right now.
Ow. That'll ruin your equipment real quickly.
Right, and so, but that being said, October through April is our busiest part of the season for the Rialto anyway, with the winter Texans coming in. And that's where we will make most of our funds for that kitchen.
Good. Well, you're doing a great job down there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments? I declare the public hearing closed, and now we go to consider an act on an ordinance granting a 6-month extension of a conditional use permit to Stephen Martin to begin on September 6, 2022, and expire on March 6, 2023, to allow a mobile food establishment to be placed in the 2 parking spaces in front of the Alto Theater at 327 South Commercial in the right-of-way of the State Highway 90 loop as indicated in exhibits and operated while awaiting the purchase and installation of commercial kitchens at the Rialto Theater.
I'll make a motion that we grant a 6-month extension of the conditional use permit to Stephen Martin to begin on September 6, 2022, and expire on March 6, 2023, to allow a mobile food establishment to be placed in front of the Rialto Theater on Commercial.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're gonna go to case number PZ 2208-16, which is public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit by Joe R. Gonzalez to temporarily live in a recreational vehicle RV at 253 South 8th Street while renovating an existing house located on the property. The property is currently zoned R7A district.
Yes, so this is an application for a conditional use permit to live in an RV at the location. And the applicant is currently renovating his structure, and he plans to live in another RV whilst he does that behind this building. The applicant is here to answer any questions that you have. This case was heard by the P&Z last week, and they unanimously voted to approve this conditional use permit request. Thank you.
So that's for 7 months.
Yes.
8 months.
8 months.
8 months.
September to May, 8 months. Yep, okay.
So I guess the renovation has already started, Osei?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in the
And
process.
about what percentage of renovation does he have left? Do you have any idea?
Is Mr. Gonzalez here?
20. Can you come forward and give a detail of your project?
Probably about 2% has been completed.
About what?
2%.
About 2%?
Very little.
Okay.
I've hauled off a bunch of trash.
Okay.
There's still a lot of trash on the property.
Okay.
And I was waiting to get the RV here because it's very nasty.
Is this like a new piece of property to you, or
Yeah,
you've
I
had
just
it?
bought it.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so you just got it and you're cleaning it up, and you're
Yeah.
going to build something new or renovate something that's there?
Renovate what's there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, I declare this public hearing closed. We go to consider an act on granting a conditional use permit to Joe R. Gonzalez for 8 months to begin on September 6, 2022, and expire on May 6, 2023, to allow a recreational vehicle to be placed at 253 South 8th Street as depicted in exhibits, and use a temporary dwelling and renovating the existing house on the property.
Well, I make a motion that we grant the conditional use permit to Joe R. Gonzalez for 8 months, to begin on September 6, 2022, and expire on May 6, 2023, to allow in a recreational vehicle to be placed at 253 South 8th Street, as depicted in the exhibits, and used as a temporary dwelling while renovating the existing house on the property.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna go to the city manager, which is consider an act on approving task order number 22 to the agreement with LNV LLC for the Harbor Cross replacement in the amount of $4,000. And no change orders, right?
I'm sorry?
No change orders because they got a flat on the crane, they couldn't pick it up.
Mayor and council, this is very possibly the last FEMA project we'll have, very possibly.
Very good.
But I'm not gonna make that promise, but very
That's all
possibly
right.
this will be the last one. This is the dealing with the design work, and it's taken a while to get there for various reasons, all of which have been out of our control. But this is a FEMA project, so we have to go very carefully with it. But it's moving forward with the design work, and we have somebody already who will be doing the work. And it has to be done precisely. We don't want it to blow over again as it did before. It's got to be wind certified, et cetera. So we have to be careful with the design this time. So anyway, that's what's before you at this time.
Is there an approximate time, how long it will be when it's?
To build it?
To build it and set it up? Any?
The design work I'm anticipating will take 30 to 45 days, knowing how long engineers, because of the precision necessary. And then after that, it's not going to take long to build it. My guess is another 30 to 45 days approximately. Those are estimates.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve task order number 22 to the agreement with LNV LLC for the Harbor Cross replacement in the amount of $4,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consider an act on an interlocal agreement with the city of Ingleside for a customer water service connection at 2527 County Road 2028.
Yes, the city received a request from Nestor Angel to receive water from the city of Ingleside. The property is located within the Aransas Pass ETJ, but we do not have that water service available in that area. So he's requested to receive water from the city of Ingleside. So we would enter into an interlocal agreement with the city of Ingleside for them to provide him water.
I make a motion that we, are you okay? Oh, approve the interlocal agreement with the city of Ingleside for customer water service connection at 2527 County Road 2028 to a Mr. Nestor Angel.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're gonna go to Development Services, which is consider an act to award the request for proposals to Bridges Specialties Incorporated for the Brown Harbor Water and wastewater line replacement project in the total amount of $172,947 as the base bid and additive alternate number 1.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. These are the same pipes that I've always been talking about. If you go down the Dale Miller Bridge and you look north, you'll see the wavy pipes that actually match the waves of the water. This project for the base bid is actually to bore under the Carn Harbor Bridge. The additive was to actually remove the piling so we can actually open up that channel so people can actually go back and forth to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So yes, the base bid is for the necessity to get it underneath the channel. The alternate was for the aesthetics part, which is still a necessity, but we didn't want to make or break the project based on that. But luckily, we did come in under budget with the 2 items. So right now, it's in your table to approve.
Will Bay Harbor be out of water while they're doing the reconnections and stuff?
No.
No, they
No,
won't
that's
be.
going to stay connected until everything's ready to do. There might be a little hiccup in between in terms of maybe an hour or so, but no, that water will stay active and that line will stay active until everything's ready to be connected.
And this company is bonded and insured, and we have them on file.
Correct. Yeah, they've done work
They've done
for
work
the
for
city
us.
rentals
Well,
before.
I just want to make sure.
Now, this was something that we had issues with a while back with that particular line, right?
Yes.
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 Emergency issues, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, I make a motion that we award the request for proposals to Bridges Specialties Inc. for Calm Brown Harbor Water and Wastewater Line Replacement Project in the amount of $172,947.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna go to consider an act on approving the closing of boat ramps at Conbarn Harbor and the closing of Turnbow and Allen Boulevard by 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 29, 22, and use it Harbor Point Park for the 7th annual Trunk or Treat event.
Yeah, so we're asking permission to close down the harbor. We're gonna close down Turnbow and Allen Boulevard as well by 5 o'clock that day, so we can actually have some parking and have that our 7th annual. I haven't been part of one before, but I'm excited about it. But that's what we're asking for.
What costume are you gonna wear?
It's a
Are you gonna be
great
Robin?
event.
I haven't decided yet. Yeah. I may be Freddy Krueger.
He's
maybe.
going to be the Public Works Director, right?
No, that's what I am all the time. I want to be something different. Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the closing of boat ramps at Conbrown Harbor and the closing of Turnbow and Allen Boulevard by 5 p.m. on Saturday, October 29, 2022, and using Harbor Point Park for the 7th annual Trunk or Treat event.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're gonna go to City Council staff announcement, which is a special meeting, September 12, 2022, which is, Gary?
Yes, this is a special meeting, not just a work session, because action is necessary as discussed earlier, but the adoption of the operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year and adoption of the for the upcoming fiscal year tax rate. And then there's been some discussion, maybe there's a way to address this otherwise, but it's a good idea, the golf cart for clean green. And see how we can address that. That proposal was brought up. So there may be a way to address that before then, but we'll see. So.
And it's at 5:30, correct?
Yep. 5:30. Yes.
Okay, and an update on CDBG
MIT funds.
MIT funds?
It'll take just a couple of minutes. I know we're running long here. But in a nutshell, we have access, not the possibility. We have access that's been approved for $5 million for infrastructure, but it's got to be green related. This is coming from the federal government. And it's being run through the Council of Governments, COG, and I have attended a meeting. Sandra has attended meetings on this. And while you were having your CHARM meeting, or whatever that was called, CHARM, I was at another meeting in Sinton on this issue. And there was an attempt by all the cities in this area, us included, to see if there was a way, because of the formula that was used to calculate how much each city would get, if there would be a change in that formula. We didn't make that final decision. Others make the final decision. COG, I believe, made that final decision. They voted on it, and they refused to change the formula, and they have the good reasons. It's not being critical. They have their good reasons. But we have to stay, instead of getting $7 million with a new formula, and we'll have to stay with $5 million. But that's the case with all the cities around here. They all get less because of the formula that's being used. But $5 million is $5 million. We just have to tie it to green, and that's what's going to be the challenge. I've got another meeting coming up. I'm asking planning to go with me to the COG headquarters and talk about more specifics of it and how we specifically can use it and meet the guidelines. And there are going to be very strict guidelines for this. But it's not a matter of will we get it, we have gotten it. We just have to meet those guidelines, and that's what we're getting briefings on. And any questions? Won't take any more of your time on that. But you'll be hearing more about it as time progresses. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're gonna go to citizen comments. Citizen comments are intended for the matter that are not scheduled on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record. Be advised that the Texas Open Meeting Act prohibits the city council from responding and discussing your comments. The law authorizes the following: make a statement of factual information, recite existing policy, advised that this subject may be placed on the agenda for a subsequent meeting.
Hector Rios, 1044 South Commercial. Mr. Blanchard, I greatly appreciate your invitation to visit with you. I really prefer to go ahead and speak to you on a public format. I greatly appreciate you doing. Great. Council, I just think spending that money on that pier is just bad business when you already have the pier. You're spending money on something that we already have, and that's just bad business, period. There's nothing beyond that. I understand that we're getting this money from the crime prevention, the sales tax, and all that. But if we already have this pier, we could utilize that somewhere else. We could utilize that to help Mr. Blanchard and police the city. And I think some of the best people to help Mr. Blanchard would be the victims here in Aransas Pass of the high crime rate. If you look on the actual terms of what we could actually use some of this crime money, there's some public outreach programs that can be done. And I think it'd be a good idea to involve the citizens who are the ones that are out there on the streets, going to work every day, seeing things going on, trying to help their neighbors. I just saw something on Facebook the other day. Somebody spotted some guy, and then they kind of kept an eye on him and then kind of chased him off. So I think your citizens here of Aransas Pass could really, really help out with the crime rate if given the opportunity. And I'm just hoping that one of y'all might just review, see what we can do to involve the citizens, and then maybe we can all help each other and do what we're supposed to do, is be thy neighbor's keeper. I greatly appreciate your time, greatly appreciate your service. I love each and every one of you. Thank you.
Evening. Elise Chacon, citizen of Aransas Pass. On August 22nd, I came in front of you in regard to an unauthorized P&Z fee that I was charged in February of this year. The fee that I was charged was not a fee in place. In the meeting, you all allowed the city manager to lie to your faces while you held the truth in your hands. If you listen back to the meeting and go to minute 21, you will hear Jan ask if y'all can put the P&Z commission fee on the next workshop meeting if y'all don't have something. The city manager cuts Jan off and states, we don't have something, and that's what it comes down to. This right here was a blatant lie and is extremely concerning considering you all passed a P&Z appeal fee on July 5th at the meeting. This shows the incompetence not just of the city manager, but of you all. Then the city manager continues to say that when he found out that there was nothing in place at that point, he knew he was going to have to refund me because there was no policy. Liar. He approved on July 1st planning and development to be put on the agenda for the action July 5th to pass that fee. I was here at the July 5th meeting. When you all passed that fee, I was only refunded after having to ask. Gary did not authorize me to be paid back until July 12th, after I pulled open records and asked to be put on the agenda to ask you all for a refund. So when exactly did he find out that there wasn't a fee in place? After I corrected him and that y'all had already passed a fee at the July 5th meeting, he states, I've explained it. That should be unacceptable to you as an explanation. What he explained is that he is incompetent and he is a liar. As Sir Walter Scott said, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. If you all are going to continuously keep blindly following, listening, and taking the advice of staff without checking on the accuracy of what they are telling you, then we don't need you. You might as well step down. Additionally, it has been 531 days that the city manager, along with other members of the leadership, and as the mayor said, a very good friend of his, assisted and put our city in NFIP violation. Myself and my attorney have been waiting over a week to hear from you. We replied, we got your certified letter, we replied to it, he sent you everything you need to show. The lawsuit that we are in is a civil lawsuit over a fence line and has absolutely nothing to do with NFIP violations and a berm removal. Y'all are responsible to make sure that this city is compliant and in the NFIP violations. so that we aren't in violation. And you've done nothing. Absolutely nothing. A couple of you have been over there and you can see how messed it up it is, and he won't meet me. I've been told, Gary's gonna meet with you next week. You should get an email. You should get a phone call. I get nothing.
Concerned citizen. Speaking of y'all's violations, I mean, we'll just start there. City council meetings shall not engage in shouting, unruly behavior, all this. That's a direct violation of First Amendment rights. You might as well remove that. Open Meetings Act 551.007 states that a government body may not prohibit criticism or free speech by any public person. So you need to remove that, taking away people's rights. Secondly, I've been dealing with a friend and looking over numerous violations because he was sanctioned by the city over a pallet. Okay. Unfortunately, there's numerous buildings that have way worse conditions. One being the mayor's building. He had 5 violations. Yet still passed. And yes, you can just hush because you're not supposed to speak. Yet it still passed. Yet my friend's building got felled over 1 pallet and got threatened to be raided over 1 pallet. Yet yours had numerous violations. Within the last 2 weeks, you fixed them. But why did it take 6 years? Because you've only, you were last inspected 6 years ago. You know, I can understand the incompetence done by the inspectors if it was a volunteer service through the fire department, but these are paid firefighters that are supposed to be taking care of the citizens to make sure that they're safe. That's the whole reason for these inspections. You know, up until last week, his doors were a safety hazard. Could have easily gotten somebody killed because they both didn't go the same direction. They went opposite directions. I can't even take my family in there to eat because I have handicapped people in my family that have wheelchairs. They can't maneuver through those doors. I'm glad he fixed them. But the point is y'all are taking a fight against citizens who are just strictly trying to make sure that our rights aren't violated and taken away from us, yet you yourselves, as council members and business owners, have direct violations that get swept under the carpet. Y'all want to spend extra money on a pier and boat ramp that's not needed. That's the Coast Guard's job. You can spend that money towards the police department. We've already discussed that. You know, I mean, if you guys cannot do your job, you can be replaced. It's very simple. And I'll explain that really easy because, let you know, y'all were talking about Rockport earlier. Everybody over there is on pins and needles. They're getting booted out.
Okay, well, your 3 minutes are up.
3 minutes.
Chief Blanchard spoke for 16 minutes
Your
2 weeks ago.
Up, sir.
Y'all already set precedent by letting Chief Blanchard speak.
Sir, the mayor's spoken, you need to step down.
So you're taking away my freedom of speech?
Valdez, if he's not gonna cooperate, he can be escorted off the property for disrupting his.
I'll leave.
Don't have to escort.
Anybody else?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Giles Coulter. I'm going to be speaking about repeated violations to the Constitution against a local gym owner. An annual biennial Aransas Pass fire inspection was conducted on March 30th, 2019. For Texas Strong Fitness, this inspection, however, was not authorized until August 9th, 2022. How was this inspection conducted if it wasn't approved yet? There was only one potential code violation for a Knox box that no other business had. This inspection was also conducted in 21 minutes, according to Edward Borrego, Assistant Fire Chief. The next annual inspection date is set for March 25th, 2024. On March 25th, 2022, another annual inspection was conducted by Jason Padron, the Aransas Pass Fire Department captain, on Texas Strong Fitness. 2 citable code violations were given, but 1 was thrown out of court. Keep in mind, nothing about the Knox box was mentioned on the citation or noted as a violation. Also, there was no owner signature on this audit because Jason Padron broke the owner's Fourth Amendment rights and entered a private property without permission, a warrant, nor an emergency. A reinspection was conducted on April 7, 2022 on Texas Strong Fitness by Jason Padron. However, this inspection was not approved until August 9, 2022. How was this inspection conducted if it was not approved yet? The reinspection was over an outlet that was thrown out on court on June 21, 2022. Next annual inspection date is set for March 25, 2024. An annual inspection was conducted on Texas Strong Fitness on June 29, 2022. Keep in mind, this is not a continuation of an inspection or a reinspection, as Police Chief Blanchard has stated numerous times. But how did this gym have another annual inspection after the annual on March 25, 2022? Annuals are to be completed every 2 years, not at will. Jason Followill already went through an annual, a reinspection by the fire department, 2 more by the city electrical inspector, who was later found out to not be certified for his job and had the last code violation discharged from court. So why did the police come to his business fully armed and publicly harass him? This is all on video, by the way. This inspection wasn't authorized until June 30th, 2022. Why did the police come before approval? The next inspection date is set for March 25th, 2024. This does not state inspection on June 29th, 2022. We, the people, will state this again. Why harass, subpoena, threaten, and break numerous constitutional rights over a business owner standing his ground against the city's corruption? Thank you. Have a blessed night.
So, it's come to my attention that you guys have trespassed a citizen here on city property for alleged threats. That is unconstitutional. So you actually have proof that he's threatened anybody. You're breaking his amendment rights. And I hold you accountable for that. And I've already spoken.
30 minutes ago, right before he was able to come to do this.
Yep. They followed him around today to make sure he got these paperwork so he can't come to these meetings. That's against the law. This is a free speech area. And I have a problem with that. I am for the people. And what you guys are doing right now, you're a bunch of commies. And you own a restaurant, so do I. And what you've gotten away with, I didn't get away with. I had to spend thousands of dollars. You got away with it for years. But you sitting there doing all this stuff, I've contacted some big attorneys. Now you just opened it up for big attorneys to come into this city on pro bono. I've contacted Perry Sanders. He's a big attorney. He owns all the Antler hotels, all the famous steakhouses. He also used to be the Jackson attorney of family, Big E's attorney. I've already in contact with him this evening. You guys are opening yourselves up. He needs to be fired. He's doing an unconstitutional job and it's not serving our people the right way. You know, Blanchard, me and you had a talk a couple weeks ago. You keep saying you're for the people, you're a liar. Whatever fits your capacity or whatever you think is going to get you somewhere, it's going to get you fired. And we hope to see you in jail. And you know our cops don't make it very well in jail. I'm telling you, we are coming for you guys. You guys all need to step down. Jason Knight's the only one so far that's stood by and done what's right by the Constitution. I'm ashamed of you to be in the restaurant business. I've been in the restaurant business for over 35 years. Your restaurant should be boycotted for allowing this stuff to happen. You allow it to happen. You're fire chief. And then serving a trespass for somebody that's not even gone onto somebody's property, criminal trespass, bull. I call bull on that. You cannot criminally trespass somebody until they have committed a crime. And making up hearsay is also a false allegation, which is another crime, making a false police report. So whoever made these false accusations about somebody going to threaten you guys, and then let's talk about wasting taxpayers' dollars. You had 7 police officers here tonight. Talk about wasting tax dollars. Grow up. We the people have had enough.
So we're just gonna go off of what he just told us. That criminal trespass warrant or hook and ladder, it's not even signed. You have to have a criminal trespass warrant signed by a judge. It's just printed off. So that's bogus. So good job on that one. All of the other allegations against y'all, are we gonna do anything about those? No? Okay. So let's start with the reliable and credible information that Jason Followill poses a threat to anybody. Do you have proof? Do you have messages? Videos? Because, I mean, all of Jason's stuff is, you know, public knowledge. It's all over the Facebook. Y'all are more than welcome to go look at it. It's ridiculous. Oh, and then you want to tell him that he can't go to the fire department or the police department? So you're telling him he can't go to an emergency facility? What if there's a fire? What if there's an emergency? No? All right. Hey, Kelly, that code that you put on here, that's for a burglary of a coin machine.
Yeah.
It's not trespassing.
Well, I must have written, not voted correctly, but it's still not law.
See, that's.
But you can't criminal trespass. No, you can't.
Mayor, it's going to be directed toward you.
I mean, it's bogus because it's not signed, but okay. I mean, we all know that you like to cherry pick your
Ma'am,
codes.
if you're going to speak this way.
No, I'm done. I'm pretty sure everybody knows how much bull that y'all do, and it's going to just get worse. Thank you.
Perry Sanders said thanks for the lawsuit.
Any other comments?
Fun stuff.
Okay. Now we're going to go to executive session on section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meeting Act to meet with his attorney to seek legal advice on a matter of which the duty of the attorney to the city council under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Open Meeting Act to relate to Microcore Technologies Incorporated and Redfish Bay Boathouse. And it is 7:22. We're going to reconvene in open session to consider and take action, if any, on any item discussed in the executive session.
No action to be taken, and I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.